Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode, we're talking about college football top 25 picks and predictions for Week 13. Each week, I collect all of the current 2017 NFL team data in order to analyze and project potential college football performance. And since it's a weekly collection, there's always going to be some variation between different variables. However, there's always going to be little nuggets of truth that could become bigger nuggets of truth as the season continues. So stick around as I analyze each week's matchups based on analytics. And if you're new to the channel, all terms and definitions will be in the description. So starting with this week, let's start with a recap of Week 12. Did amazing. A very, very, very good week. Went 19-2. Two games that were missed: Iowa versus Purdue and Kansas State over Oklahoma State. As I say every single year, Kansas State is one of those teams that, for whatever reason, they sneak up on teams. They always get that one upset win once a year. They take down a pretty good Big 12 team, take them down a notch, and that happened this week. So it took a while. I was kind of putting my chips on a couple other games before this game, but that ultimately happened. However, still a pretty dang good week. Not a ton of upsets per se, data-wise, and very good results overall. And it should be, because we're so far into the season right now that from a data perspective, there shouldn't be too many changes here. Now, when you get to the actual picks this week, so starting with Mississippi State versus Ole Miss, most of the data here has it for Mississippi State. I won't get too much into this game per se, but it's pretty sizable for Mississippi State. Same situation with Miami and Pittsburgh. Miami, pretty sizable difference between the two. Baylor, TCU, pretty sizable difference. South Florida, UCF, very, very tight. Very, very tight game here between TCU and South Florida. The O/DPts score, which is essentially offensive points forced and defensive points prevented, is 95.46 for South Florida and 96.72 for UCF. The only big difference between these two teams is that South Florida has played a weaker schedule versus UCF. But that's it. That's the only sort of variable that's sitting in the ether there to kind of tell you about that game. So that's going to be a game I'm going to be very interested in seeing where it goes. Then, of course, we have Kansas versus Oklahoma State. In this particular game, it's Oklahoma State. Washington versus Washington State. Washington has it in this particular game, but it is a rivalry game. And again, this is rivalry week. So if you didn't know that already, it's going to be a fun week. But these weeks are always, from a data perspective, I kind of want to see how this week goes because of all the rivals that are coming. But this is a game that the data favors Washington, but Washington State is, of course, a little down there. And then, of course, we get Michigan State versus Rutgers. In this particular game, it's Michigan State. Illinois versus Northwestern. Northwestern is favored here. Georgia versus Georgia Tech. Georgia pretty heavily favored here, but Georgia Tech has been sneaking up on a couple teams. They've given some pretty good fights. So be sure to kind of check that game out. And then, of course, we get Michigan versus Ohio State. In this particular game, Ohio State has it. This is, again, another rivalry game, but I don't think that Michigan has the offensive firepower to keep up with Ohio State. Could be wrong, but that's just what the data says about this particular matchup. And then, of course, we get to the other games. East Carolina versus Memphis. In this matchup, it goes to Memphis. Then we get to the Iron Bowl, Alabama versus Auburn. Very, very close. 99.76 for Alabama to 97.97 for Auburn. Alabama is undefeated. Auburn has lost a couple games. That's the only real dividing line there between these two teams. So this is going to be a fun game to watch. Most of the time the Iron Bowl is, the Iron Bowl is always exciting, but this year in particular, it's really exciting just because there is some hope for Auburn this year that they could make it competitive, because there have been previous years where it wasn't very competitive, and I think this is one of those years. This is going to be an Iron Bowl where pretty dang competitive, pretty entertaining to say the least. Then we get to Minnesota versus Wisconsin. In this particular game, Wisconsin's favored pretty heavily. Maryland, Penn State heavily favored. North Carolina versus North Carolina State. North Carolina State is pretty favored here. Boise State versus Fresno State, another big rivalry game, at least with Mountain West Conference. As many of you may not know this, but I attended Fresno State, so the Boise State game was always a huge. It was pretty much the biggest rivalry out of all of them for the most part. And sure, San Diego State kind of is up there, but Boise State, you just had an extra bit of, in that game for the most part. And then we get to Oklahoma versus West Virginia. In this game, Oklahoma is favored. Pretty fun game to watch, I would say. I would definitely circle that game and check that game out, because you got Mayfield versus Will Grier, which I think is going to be fun. And then, of course, you get Clemson versus South Carolina, another rivalry. In this particular game goes to Clemson. Then, of course, we get LSU versus Texas A&M. LSU favored in this particular matchup, but Texas A&M does have the better offense, which it makes an intriguing kind of thing here. And then finally, we get to Notre Dame versus Stanford in this particular matchup. Notre Dame is favored right there. So those are the picks for the week. This is the cheat sheet. The cheat sheet just has the wins and losses just right there. If you follow this channel, this format, you can, and you don't want to listen to me talk about some of the games and just my input, you can just go to the end of the video and have the cheat sheet there. And of course, my name is James Coburn. You can find my other work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody that you know. And I will talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.